we may include them in the international market. And I'm very happy to say that we have Fernandito with us today. He is from Mexico, and he will explain a little bit more about forestry in that region. And we have David Utsby with us, and he is from Africa, and we will explain more about the situation in his role. Then I would like to hand you the microphone, so you might have something to say.
Thanks so much. My name is Andrew Goldberg, and I work for the Rainforest Alliance, where I am the manager for business development for our community forest partners. And we are really glad to come here today to really support and start engaging markets in a way that our partners on the ground have not really fully moved forward. So I'm really grateful that my colleagues from Mexico have come, and a community forest member has come with us all the way from Sobamaya in Mexico. And it's a chance to explore and to, I think, gain confidence and gain understanding about how the market works. And it just has to start now. And I think the FSC movement and the sustainable timber movement that ATIBT represents is a really good way forward for these forest communities who are excellent stewards. And direct sourcing from these communities provides tremendous environmental benefit and social benefit in sort of different ways than larger concessions do. So it's an important movement. Thanks, Timon, for setting this up.
Then I would like to invite Fernandito and Edgar to the stage.
So, bonjour, je m'excuse parce que mon français ce n'est très bien pour parler. So, we're going to speak in English. And I would like to start with Fernando, that he's going to say some welcome words in Mayan. Fernando is coming all the way from the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, which is in the southeast part of Mexico. So he's going to start this conversation with some Mayan words.
Malobkim titulakales. Kimagako aktaway tenach telakawot kakbaes baskak betik taklum. Peninsula Yucatan, to Lumilo Yucatan, tonek centik le cab, lau cab, tres garantías, to Lumil Quintana Roo, un pe grupo colel, cum magantic, te, ti le osh, yetunek, le la uhuch bilunek, tia umagantawa, chuhukwa, yetech ochwa. Kima kinwosham, tumen tonetak aot kakbaesh, bashkak betik taklum, bashkak betik yolak utzikuntik tulakalu kasil, tushkak anta, tushkak kahta.
I do not understand everything. So what he's saying it is that thank you for having us. He's very happy to be here, and being representing the Yucatan Peninsula here, it is very important for him. And on Friday we're going to have our coffee hour or something like that in the FSC booth. So Fernando, he brought some Ramon tree tea and honey that we're going to be able to taste on Friday. And well, that's pretty much it what he said. So we should start talking a little bit about the community-based forestry in Mexico, especially in the Yucatan Peninsula. So I don't know if everyone is aware about the Rainforest Alliance. Rainforest Alliance, it is a global organization. We have presence in over 72 countries around the world. And we have been working on community-based forestry since about 25 to 30 years. In Mexico, we started working on community-based forestry since 1991. So it is very important, and the final goal of the Rainforest Alliance is the preservation and conservation of natural resources, their biodiversity, environmental services, and such. But on a different way, we do it in a different way than other NGOs around the world. We try to preserve and to conserve all natural resources through the development of sustainable value chains. And forestry, timber, and non-timber forest products value chains are one of the main value chains that we're working not only in Mexico and in Latin America, but also in Africa and in Asia. Si quieres, vele dando la siguiente. Well, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Selva Maya and Calakmul, and we want to show where is it located. It is between the Selva Maya, that it is comprehending the forest in Guatemala and in Mexico. We have a little bit more than 2.5 million hectares in this area, and we have over 500,000 people living in this area, and which have rich cultural biodiversity and ecosystem services and such. And it is this area in Mesoamerica, it is very globally important to the biodiversity, ecosystem services, and natural resources in our region. Well, we were saying these ones are some specific fauna that you can find in this area. But in here, talking a little bit about in Mexico, with here it is where we are working. This is the Yucatan Peninsula, that it is comprehending the state of Quintana Roo, Campeche, and Yucatan. You may know this area because in here we have Cancun, which is very, very famous all over the world. But in here we have all the communities, forestry communities that we are working with from the Rainforest Alliance in Mexico, and some of them, they are FSC certified, and some of them are on the process of being certified. Nowadays, we are just working with 27 ejidos in this region, with an impact on over 500,000 hectares. But we have an opportunity to upscale the work that we're doing on forestry in this area with more than 52, 55 ejidos, and have an impact on over a million hectares in this area. So in Mexico, talking a little bit about land tenure in Mexico, it is very interesting to talk about this because, dale la anterior. Bueno, dale la que sigue. La que sigue. As you can see, you can see here all the frames of the different ejidos or the communities that we have that we are working with. But the interesting thing here it is that these communities, they own the land. The land is owned by them, so the natural resources are owned by them. So the management that they do, it has been done since many years ago. But the thing here, it is the land tenure. It is the important thing. It is that the land, it is owned by them, and this is only the yellow ones are the ones that we are working currently in Mexico in this area. But you can see all these forestry areas, and they are owned also by different communities. So the work that we're doing is community-based forestry with these guys. In here, it is just, as we were saying, it is just an example of some of the communities that we are working with the area in hectares. And the one that you can see on green are the ones that are currently certified by the FSC. The yellow ones are the ones that are running their FSC certification process nowadays. The average area of each ejido, it runs around 30,000 hectares. So what we are trying to do, it is not only to keep working on community-based forest management, but what we are, the reason that we are here now, it is because we are looking new markets for this timber that it is being managed from these ejidos or communities. It is very important to say that in these communities we are working with around 16 different species. Some of them are very well known as the mahogany, but there's some other species that are less known, and those ones are the ones that we want to push and to push into new markets, especially into the European market. So all the work that we're doing, it has, as we have been saying, it has a direct impact on protecting the forest, community forest as a conservation strategy, and helping a forest community to build sustainable enterprises. We work with a lot of community-based forestry enterprises in the Yucatan Peninsula, and as I was saying, what we are looking at is to bring these lesser-known species into these big European markets. And with the work that we're doing, in one way or another, we're having an impact on the SDGs. We have an impact on reducing poverty, for example, or for climate action, and some of these other goals. In 2020, we did a study that it was related with biodiversity, and we did a study between areas that have been managed, forestry managed for the last 20 years, and areas that they have been living as conservation areas in this ejido that it is called Nuevo Becal, that is also in the Yucatan Peninsula. And we found something very, very interesting. We did this genomic study in these two areas, and what we found, it is that the forests that have been managed for over 20 or 25 years, the biodiversity is higher than in those places that were lived as conservation areas. Nuevo Becal for us, it is a very important community, because it was the first community in Mexico to be FSC certified on biodiversity. And it was the third in Latin America. And for example, there's another ejido that is called Nobec, which was the first FSC community-based certification in the world. They acquired the certification, the FSC certification, in 1993, I think, and they have kept it for that long. Y el video ya no se puede ver. No se puede ver el video, ¿verdad? Sí. So now we're going to see a short video of Novek. I don't think that we can have the sound, but you can see the translation in English.
Vayamos mejorando nuestra vegetación que tenemos. Es decir, introduciendo especies como caoba, silicote, para seguir enriqueciendo, sabiendo de que es una fuente que nos provee para todos los socios de aquí del proyecto. El hecho de tener o hacer muebles con madera de nuestro propio ejido, que es madera certificada, estamos acreditando de que estamos haciendo bien las cosas. El recurso, la materia prima, viene de bosques manejados. La selva es un recurso natural que nos ha dado no solamente a muchas generaciones, nos ha dado sustento. Yo estoy convencido de que la selva, si nosotros seguimos a este ritmo, nunca se va a acabar para nosotros. No, al contrario, yo siento que estamos haciendo un aprovechamiento razonable. O sea, siento que no estamos acabando con el ecosistema, haciendo aprovechamiento forestal. Y si eso nos da de comer, pues hay que seguirle metiendo más plantas todavía a la selva. ¿Por qué? Porque sabemos que de ahí vamos a depender siempre. Y yo creo que todo ese esfuerzo que estamos haciendo nosotros ahorita, con eso de la reforestación, estamos garantizando de que las nuevas generaciones tengan también ese mosaico ahí, para que también ellos puedan vivir de ello. No solamente nosotros, sino también ellos. Siempre hemos sido positivos en ese aspecto nosotros, que no vayamos en contra, al contrario, a favor.
So thank you very much. And in resume, once more, we're working with these communities all over the Yucatan Peninsula in order for them to achieve new markets on different timber and non-timber forest products. And yes, we hope that these guys and like Fernandito and his community that is called Siuche, they can do some business with companies here in Europe. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So Edgar, thank you very much. And Fernando, thank you. I think it's good to say that a very large part of our forests of the world are being managed by smallholders and community forests. And as FSC and as Rainforest Alliance, we work in many ways to empower those communities and connect them to the international forest. And now I would like to invite David, because he works also together with a lot of communities, and this is also about empowerment.
Thank you. Started by stealing some electricity. I have a few slides here. I can stand there and manage them. So I'll speak a few minutes about a Mozambican company, Levas Forest, where I'm one of the owners since a few years back. Do you think they are coming? Ah, here we go.
This down because I think it's blocking the view. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Is that a little bit better? Is that better or worse?
Good. So here's a picture from Bob from our concession, which is about 46,000 hectares in central Mozambique. If we would zoom out, we would see that there's quite a difference even from above to see where the borders of our concession is, because the fact that we have been managing this forest for about 17 years has given a clear mark compared to the surrounding concessions, which are not being managed in a sustainable way. So you can actually see the level of greenness, the level of canopy, how it has developed through our forest management for about 17 years. We are located in central Mozambique, so just in the middle. We're a green mark with our concession. Our headquarters in Beira. This is only about 100 kilometers. You would guess it's an hour and a half, but it's not, obviously, because the roads are, as you can imagine, not the best, so it takes us about 6 hours to drive from our headquarters up to the concession. We are neighboring with a big national park, Gorongosa, with which we are cooperating a lot to create a corridor with sustainable taking care of nature all the way from here and finally, we hope, out to the coast. I will not speak so much about how we do forestry. I will focus more on how we work with communities. But we were FSC certified already from start in 2005. And we have programs for taking care of the biodiversity of nature, of the animals. We have programs, of course, for preventing fires. We have programs for logging or registering every tree that we take down. We cut approximately 1 tree per 12 hectares per year. So it's very limited, the takeout, and the increase in biomass is approximately 10 times more than what we take out. So we cut the trees, and then we have our sawmill in the middle of the concession with mainly Western equipment where we do the sawing, the planing, and we also have a carpentry in Beira, so we sell and produce everything from wood raw material into finished products, like, for example, we do ready-built houses, we do outdoor furniture, we do some paneling, we do also some indoor applications like flooring and so on. And this we sell mainly locally, a little bit to South Africa, but now we want to start exporting to Europe as well. And that's one reason why I'm in this fair. So I'm going to talk mainly about the people. So, as you're all aware, the main risk to the forests are the people, because that's what causes fires, that's what causes illegal logging, that's what causes danger to biodiversity. But at the same time, the people are the only ones that can also save it and to actually be the asset to take care of this. So I would say one of the absolute main objectives is for us to make use of the people that live in our concession and that work with us, to make sure that they help us in the work we do for the forests. So we have about 250 employees right now, and more than 90% of them live within the concession. And our calculation is that every employee supports approximately 10 more family members with their salary. So we actually give income to more than 2,000 people, which in this area, which is one of the absolutely poorest in one of the poorest countries of the world, makes a huge difference for their, well, first of all, to get food, but also to make some more decent living. The workers live in our concession. We have built a village, and some of their family members do as well. And there they do some agriculture, but they also do small businesses because we are helping them, the ones that don't work in our company, to have small businesses, and we help to promote that and to sell their products. I will give you an example of that. One important part of what these people need is education. We have different sorts of education programs. Right now we're launching an agroforestry education program where we are teaching the local communities how they can actually make agriculture without burning the forest, so how the forest and agriculture can work together. The project is led by a young man who was actually born and raised within our concession. And through, well, he got the literacy thanks to us because he learned to read and write. And then he went on to university, and now he's coming back to the region to lead this agroforestry project. So this is what we want to stop then, and or at least to minimize the slashing and burning. So that's one educational program within agriculture. Another part of what we do for our people is healthcare. We have our clinic built at the sawmill where we give them basic healthcare, and we also do vaccination. So, for example, we vaccinated all of our employees and their families from COVID right now. And in Mozambique, the vaccination coverage is very, very low, so this makes an impact. We have our school. When we started the company, we taught all our employees to read and write, and then we expanded into their children and their families. So we have up until, I think, 8th or 9th grade, where all these kids get a basic education. In our company, there are more men than women working, approximately 80% men or so. I would assume that in the industry we are talking more like 95, 98%. So we're working actually to get more women working with us, and where they are overrepresented on the average is in the management positions, where our vice CEO and also many of the middle managers are women. An important part for us, because also when they get the money to the household, it's normally more wisely spent than when the man gets it. But also the women not working for us, but our family members. As I told you, we help them with their small business. So one business is to do baskets, handmade baskets, so they produce them where they live, and then we bring them to Beira, where we help them sell it, and they get 100% of whatever income that gives them. So there are some 10, 15 women involved in that, give them also an income. And well, actually that's what I wanted to say, just a little bit of a flare for how we work with developing the people around us, because we need them. And I didn't mention so that the reason we help them, well, we want to of course, but also because they are, by living in our concession, they are the ones to help us protect it, because we have some employees and we have rangers, but that won't be enough for our area. So with the 2,000 people or so connected to our company, we have eyes and ears everywhere. We teach them that if they slash and burn, they will destroy their way of income from our forest. So they have the same interest as we do, as keeping this forest sound and healthy and taking care of it. Also, if there are illegal loggers or illegal hunters, they can either prevent it themselves or they can let us know. So we have 2,000 eyes and ears out there, always helping us to do the best of the forest management. That's what I wanted to say. So I will give the floor to the next speaker.
All right, thank you, David. Thank you very much for your contribution. How's everybody doing? All right? Okay. Then we will move forward with our travels from the forest to the cities. And we invite Scott Francisco.
Thank you. It's good to be here, everybody. Merci. I'm representing...
I'm representing an organization called Cities for Forests. I have a question for everybody here. How many of you here would say that they live in a city? Curious to see what kind of ratio we have. Stefan, no. Oh, interesting. Okay. It looks like probably close to global average, which is about 55% of the world's population live in cities. I had the privilege for about 12 years of living in New York City. And I'm this way? This way? I'm coming to you today from Montreal in Canada, but I lived in New York City for about 12 years. And almost every day that I lived there, I got to walk over a beautiful bridge that is probably quite familiar to many of you, called the Brooklyn Bridge. How many people here have visited the Brooklyn Bridge? There must be at least a few people. Okay. It's probably one of the most popular tourist destinations, maybe even in the world. So I got to walk over the Brooklyn Bridge almost every day on my way to work. How many here could say they could identify what the Brooklyn Bridge is made of? I'm going to take a few guesses, a few ideas. Not from you, Stefan, you know already. Mark says what? Wood and steel. You're right on 2 counts. There's one more. What are the towers made of? No, not cement. Interesting, because it was built in 1870s, and concrete was not very much used at that time in that area. Stone. So there's 3 materials of the Brooklyn Bridge. Stone for the towers, steel for the suspension, and wood for the pedestrian deck, which is called the promenade. And that's where I got to walk almost every day. So one day I'm walking over the bridge and I'm looking at this wood. I'm going to borrow a sample here. Well, the planks of the Brooklyn Bridge look an awful lot like this. And I looked and I said, what kind of wood is that? I'm an architect. So I'm very interested in wood and how things are made. And I was like, what kind of wood is this? And I've been walking on all these years. I have a sense it's a tropical wood. I didn't know what it was. It's a very, very hard wood, a very heavy wood. I could tell that without lifting it up. And this created a certain anxiety in me. I looked at all these boards. There's almost a kilometer of wooden boardwalk. I thought, where did this wood come from? And what does this mean for the forest? And I had no idea. I had no answer. So that was 13 years ago. And I guess you could say I'm here today because of that question. That one day I walked over that bridge in that great city and I said, where did this wood come from? To me, that is going to be one of the central questions of how the forests of the world are going to be preserved, conserved, and used well into the next generations. Because most of us live in cities, and global populations are moving into cities. So there's projections, and some of you will know this number better than me, but it's about 75% of the world's population will live in a city by 2050. That's a pretty astounding number. That's completely unprecedented in human history. Cities are responsible for the vast majority of climate change emissions. Close to 80% of the climate emissions that are affecting our climate are coming from the consumption of cities. So if you take forest products as a sort of proportion of that, you say, well, it's about the same, which is the products that are coming from forests, let's call them forest risk products, you could say, even though most of those products can go either way, come from the consumption of cities. So the coffee that we drink, the chocolate that we eat, the palm oil that is in 30% of the products that we might buy at the grocery store are consumed by residents of cities. So what are we going to do about that? If city residents and city governments are completely unaware, like I was when I walked over that bridge, of where our products are coming from and what the impacts they are having, we're in a lot of trouble because we're just eating up that forest. We're eating it up. We're eating it up in the food that we eat, and potentially, if we're not aware of where our wood is coming from, we're eating it up with wood that might not be sourced properly. But at the same moment that I was walking over that bridge and thinking about this potentially devastated forest somewhere in the world that was caused by this beautiful monument that I loved. I thought, well, what if you flipped it around? How can you flip this around? Let's flip this story. What if when we purchased the wood for the Brooklyn Bridge, which is going to have to be done at some point to renew those planks, what if we did it in a way that took special attention and special care for that forest? What if we saw that as a partnership rather than an exploitation of a resource? So that every board on that bridge became a symbol of an investment in a forest somewhere. What kind of impact could you have? So then I thought, well, I'm going to have to count these boards. So I very laboriously counted the boards. There was 11,963 boards or something like that. So what would it take to turn that into an investment that would help perpetuate a forest indefinitely? Okay, so that was happening in 2008. Cities for a Forest was formed in 2018, so many years later, as an outgrowth of that project to engage as many cities of the world as possible in thinking about forest positive actions and procurement. And so we have 85 cities in our network. We're trying to work with all of those cities. We'd love to have more. There's thousands of cities in the world. Can you imagine if every city in the world had one partner forest, even, just one? Now, if we connect that to the Selva Maya, for example, you said you're working with 20 or 30 communities right now, and there's many more. There's enough community forest enterprises, and there should even be more, to support not necessarily all of the needs of the world's cities, but there's an untapped resource, let's just say, between the consumption and needs of cities and the ability for community forest enterprises to produce products that will help sustain forests. Wood is one of the most interesting ones because it's very visible. It lasts for a long time. You can write stuff on it, you can sit on it, you can touch it, you can tell stories about it. And we've created a program called the Partner Forest Program, which is to bring wood from community managed forests, like the ones that have been presented here. And we'd love to basically invite you, the forests in Mozambique and the forests in Mexico and the Selva Maya, to join the Partner Forest Network. Because we want to match you with the city. We want to tell your story. We want to tell the story of the communities that are doing that hard work in the cities of the world. And we want to create an exciting link. We want to create meaningful connections and stories that people can tell about where did this wood come from. And so that next time someone's walking over whatever bridge it is, I have my eye right now on the Pont des Arts in Paris. Who here has been to the Pont des Arts in Paris? So maybe the second most famous bridge in Paris, maybe you could say. Certainly considered the most famous for the Romantics. So that's a tropical hardwood deck. And I bet if I asked 1 million people, not one of those 1 million people, if I randomly asked them, knew where that wood came from. Do you know where it comes from, Stefan? So here's one of the world experts in tropical hardwood. And he's a French guy, and he doesn't even know where the wood came from on the Pont des Arts. This is terrible. We have to change this. But seriously, think about that. Every lover that goes onto the Pont des Arts and was going to put a lock on the side of the bridge to pledge their love should be thinking about what this wood that they're standing on means in the world. That is a powerful opportunity. That is a powerful opportunity of every bridge that is made of wood, of every boardwalk, of every park bench that is made of wood to tell the story of a forest. So that's my mission. To get the cities of the world, the residents, the governments, the companies, the NGOs of cities to not be satisfied with anything less than a good story about where their wood comes from. We need thousands and thousands of those stories supporting those forests. Because if you're a teenager living in one of these forest communities today, I asked this question when I went to Huashactún. So Huashactún is one of the communities on the Guatemala side of the Selva Maya that was shown. Anyone here been to Huashactún? It's a wonderful community-managed concession. I know Stefan does work with Carmelita, which is another concession in Guatemala. So I went to Huashactún as part of my learning journey, and I started asking people, young people, what do you know, what's your future here as a teenager? And many of them sort of, well, I'm probably gonna leave. The overwhelming sense, and we asked parents, and the parent side, well, we think our kids should probably just go and get a job somewhere else. It was a sort of like a cultural gap between the importance of the work that was being done and the sense of meaningful, exciting, innovative work for the future. So I also believe that this story sharing between cities and forests can energize young people, help them understand that the work that they're going to do, if they take over that responsibility of managing forests, is absolutely vital for the world. That's a whole different ballgame. Because if I'm a 16-year-old and I'm thinking about my future and I live in a forest community, I could say, well, it's kind of boring here, and it looks like a lot of hard work, and the pay isn't all that great. And by the way, no one really cares what I'm doing here. So why on earth would I stay? Why would I stay if people don't care about it, doesn't seem all that exciting, and maybe the pay isn't so great? All of those things can change. We can pay a better price for the wood that more meaningfully represents the work that's being done. But I believe there's something even more powerful, and that is to shine a spotlight, a cultural spotlight, from the cities of the world to those forests, say, we depend on you, we're counting on you, we're counting on this work, and we want to participate. Not to just take from you and give you money in return, that's fine, that's a good thing, but actually to understand, recognize, invite you into this partnership. So that's the Partner Forest program. In addition to the Cities for Forests website is citiesforforests.com, you can go to partnerforests.org, and there's a lot of information about the projects we're doing. We did one recently with wood that Stefan's company, Precious Woods, supplied from Gabon. Gabon has, many of you know, a strong initiative that goes back decades, but is very much in the spotlight today to really turn their whole economy into a sustainable forest economy. So we sourced wood and we brought it to Torino in Italy, and the city of Torino signed an MOU with us to work with a partner forest in Gabon. And so we did a small project with volunteers, architects, and woodworkers who all came together and rebuilt a whole park out of made new furniture, much like the furniture, some of the wood furniture here, out of Iroko from Gabon. So it's just a little taste of what it meant for people to come together, know about the wood, know about the story. Stefan came and represented some of the good work, good management work that's happening in Gabon. So that's one of thousands of stories that are potentially going to unfold. I'll stop there and then hope to have some good questions.
All right, thank you very much, Scott. Okay, we've had some introductions. Now we have some background on the stories from the forest, and we've learned that it's not just timber that comes out of the forest. We're talking about non-timber forest products. We're talking about ecosystem services. The forest has so much more to offer than that initially comes to mind. And to come back to the question, how to include the smallholders and community-based forest enterprises to the international market, I would like to go further and invite some people again to the stage. First, David, I would like you to join. Edgar, and I'm going to start with a question, and I wanted to start first with Eduardo. We are at Carrefour du Bois, and you would say that the lines have not been shorter for a long time. We are physically next to each other with the importers and the producers. But what do you think is your main boundary that you feel at this moment before you really feel you are engaged with the international market?
Thank you. Yes, I think that we have to to think on these smallholder, on terms of these smallholders. Obviously, in the case of the Yucatan Peninsula, these smallholders, they're not going to be able to provide 1 million feet board on a month. So in that case, doing it by community. So in that case, what we are doing, these alliances between the different communities in the Yucatan Peninsula, so they can have a better access to these international markets. So they can join and they can have higher volumes to offer on these 16, 15 different species. So that's what we are doing. The other thing, I think that we have to look for companies, international companies that are willing to buy not only the timber, but they are willing to buy a history behind the timber, to tell the history about these communities and the ancient knowledge that they have on the forest management, and that they have been doing it for 50, 60, 70 years. So that's the thing that I think we have to look for. These companies that are interested not only in the preservation and conservation of natural resources and livelihoods, but these companies are interested on selling these histories between these products.
Okay, so I'm hearing a sense of we need to get organized, and as we are organized, we need to ensure that the story from the forest travels with the product to the market. David, would you mind to contribute a little bit about this more? Do you have the same issues or the same challenges as they would have in Mexico?
Yeah, absolutely, and there are very many challenges for how we can reach out to the market. I mean, first one I would say is price, because managing forests and producing the way we do will never be very cost efficient. We have to charge a higher price, and walking around here, of course, you will see the sign sustainability or the word in 8 out of 10. But then when I talk to people, the first question was, what's the price? What's the price? So in theory, they say that they are so concerned, but in the end, they only want to get the best available price. And when I asked them quotation, they said that, well, customers kind of care, but not at all to that extent to what the price is. So that's one challenge for sure. Number two challenge would be the lesser known species. We have species that are not commonly known. When you walk around here, there are 4 or 5 species from Africa that people know about. And to introduce something new, of course, it's a big obstacle, because I understand the buyer who would buy a new species. He will need to have it tested, he needs to have it proved, and that takes a lot of money, and it's a big effort to show what our species can do. And then a third obstacle is the whole notion of getting tropical timber. I mean, a majority of people will just say no for what they believe is the carbon factor. They say, oh, long transport can't be good for nature. That's number one, the carbon from transport. And number two is they can see a big forest in Brazil being cut down by some illegal loggers, and that they think that to use tropical timber must be bad. So there are some. So it takes time to educate and say why this is actually good and in what way and so on. So many obstacles for getting to the market for sure.
All right, thank you very much. I would also like to extend to the audience. Is if anyone has a question, please raise a hand. If you have anything to add, please raise a hand. We are here to engage. And, well, there's the first one. Please.
Yeah, I have a technical question for David. You said that your forests are amassing biomass. Isn't that problematic at some stage? Because if you're cutting less than what's growing, I'm not very familiar with the climate in Mozambique, but isn't there any risk of like fires or of what would happen at like a larger time frame if you keep amassing biomass if you're cutting less than what's growing back, basically?
I mean, sure, at some stage you don't want the biomass to mass, but these forests have been overexploited for very long, so there is a deficit. So that's number one. Second, of course, we keep it clean of what we don't think belongs there, and especially what is most fiery. So we try to, of what is growing, we try to protect the more valuable species. We do some replantation of them, but the most important is to make sure that they have the conditions to grow. And also we are now launching production of charcoal just to be able to take out the non-wanted, like all the residues from our production, but also the growth that is very fire dangerous, so that we can make use of that as well.
I think Eduardo wants to.
No, it is pretty much the same that what it is happening in Mexico. In the forestry communities in the Yucatan Peninsula, they are just only harvesting like between 60 and 65% of what they have authorized by the government. And then besides this timber harvesting, they are also producing charcoal. So, and they are cleaning, and they are having a lot of ways of mitigating these possible forest fires. So,
All right. Kijk. All right. Matthias, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question that from a carbon perspective, obviously using it locally in higher value products that displace cement and steel with durable products would have the best carbon effect if we look at the Paris Agreement. How realistic is that to get a pricing level where you guys can sustainably survive and where you can promote wood-based houses, carbon sink houses, in a local context where maybe cement and steel is considered the main solution that people are familiar with?
yeah, for example, I think it is a very good question. In Mexico, there's a federal law, and then the state governments, they have been passing this law in which they need to start building more on wood than on cement and steel. And there's another law that says that all the wood purchases that the government are being doing or are willing to do, they have to be from wood that it has to be certified on an international basis or a local basis, a Mexican basis. So that's I think that's very interesting to promote the internal consumption of wood, and it is related with these carbon sinks and all these kind of things. Other important thing it is that with these communities in the Yucatan Peninsula, at the same time that we are working on forestry management, we're working on developing carbon projects, so they can sell these carbon credits to companies or whatever.
It's a very important question, and my perspective is that there's a value issue, which is to support the communities, you need to get the most money possible per cubic meter of wood, and it's the international market that's going to pay that. And so if you look at these samples that were passed around, like some of these are very high value woods. You're not going to build a house out of it. You're going to build a very high value item. So that might be $6 a board foot or something for a high value wood, and that $6 that goes to that community is why you're only taking one tree per hectare every 20 years, or that model. So I think that the build with wood movement globally, which is a big thing to decarbonize the building sector, is mostly predicated on softwoods, first of all, because that's the less expensive woods. Now, But in Mexico, you have a lot of diversity. So you have one of the few countries where you have pine and growing in the same country as you have these tropical woods. So that maybe you're building like a domestic market with softwoods for housing as well as then the tropicals. But we get asked that question a lot, like why should we be importing tropical wood from a long ways away? The carbon footprint of transport is actually relatively quite low compared to the other inputs. So that's another thing that the carbon story needs to get. The carbon story needs to be better communicated, because people say, oh, it's too far away. Well, you're not looking at the whole picture, especially the forest management side.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah.
Maybe add a few words on that. I mean, for sure, the prices on the local market are low, very low, for the reason that the certification factor and the cost isn't appreciated. We are competing locally with illegally logged timber, which is completely different price level. So the local market to be able to pay the price is quite limited, with the exception of when there are international buyers or financed by NGOs, like when UN is demanding something, or World Bank or embassies and stuff. Then those are buyers that will appreciate the certified wood. But second, and referring to that, the most precious parts will not be used for building forest, but we have all the sapwood that cannot be exported and used in the same way, and we also have species that we don't use today. So if we could produce locally, like CLT and stuff, from wood species and parts of the trees that are not used today, then that is clearly a very interesting option going forward.
All right. For the next question that I have prepared, I want everyone to think about the concept of added value. When you start working at the FSC, you hear it a lot. How can we add more value to the forest? How can we bring the value to the forest? So, if we define this and we pick this out of the parts of adding value, that could be place, that could be time, but now we're talking about the community forestry, it adds so much more layers to it. And then my next question, I would actually like to direct to Stefan. When you would deal with smallholder and community forest, what would be the most added value for you as a timber importer? And how would that be more added value for the market? If you want to take the stage.
Well, to explain a little bit the background, I'm working from Precious Wood. So Precious Wood is its reason to be is to promote sustainable practice in the tropics to fight against deforestation. And this frustration that you are facing with the communities, we did face the same, because we were pioneer in installing FSC certification in Amazonas, and then also in Gabon, and we never had the right return on those good practice. So we share, let's say, the same frustration. But it's a long job, a long journey, and we still believe, let's say, something will happen. But it's very slow. It's very slow. But if now, let's say, we talk about the communities, it's even more complex, because, as you said, they have even less volume, because as Precious Wood, let's say, we manage 1.1 million hectares of forest. So we are now, let's say, selling something like 70 species. So we have a kind of economy of scale that, let's say, altogether, we manage to be break-even. We have now, we are even now making some profit, but after 2 decades of high losses. And that's why, let's say, most of the people, let's say, or company who were doing the same, have stepped back, let's say, from this, because this is too challenging. And for the communities, it's even more challenging. So the main market we are supplying today was the construction, the building sector. And here they are focused on price, volume. I mean, the criteria of decision are not so much a story. This is about price, volume, guarantee of delivery, time delivery. I mean, and it's very difficult, let's say, to compete in this domain, because especially with the plantation timber. Plantation timber is also certified. I mean, sometimes we are also discussing with FSC about that, because we don't distinguish enough, let's say, the level of impact and performance of what is doing the communities compared, let's say, to the plantation timber. And plantation timber is also needed for the world, because to satisfy the demand, we also need plantation. But I think the first step, let's say, to distinguish, let's say, the communities, I mean the smallholders, let's say, is to create a proper label, let's say, to what you guys doing, because what you are doing is much more. It's much more, and I would say this is a true luxury. So my dream is to connect, let's say, the communities forest, let's say, to the luxury segment. And when okay, her name is Precious Wood, but this word of precious is not too much about the value, but about the impact. And I would like to connect, let's say, this luxury market to this positive impact. And that, I believe, let's say, when you think about luxury, this is accepting what is the most challenging. You know, do not compromise on the level of difficulties. Just apply it, whatever is the cost. That's the true definition of luxury. So if those guys are honest, you know, with what they're doing, they should accept to pay the right price to use your timber, because your level of impact is the best we can do in the world. So we have created now this collection that we call Precious Collection. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. So we have started with the wood we have in a concession, and the first, let's say, the first product was called Iris, that is showing a variety of species, and that was to put the light on the different species, and even it shows how we are even more beautiful when we are all different. You know, I mean that's another story inside the story. But and so my next, let's say, steps is to produce the same in larger quantity, let's say, using your timber, all your variety of species from the communities, and that we rebrand it. And I will say this Precious Collection is not made for us as Precious Wood. It's made for you, also the communities. And so we have started to collect your data about your species, and you had the visit of Jorge Heke, that is working with us. I could not be there. And so now, but it's a long, even to do that, it takes time, and to have also the real value, let's say, that you deserve for that, we have to also market it properly, because if we go too fast, you know, and it's not made even by a designer, the right production, of course, everybody will say we can do this bench, is very easy, but it has to be at the right place, sold by the right people, you know, telling your story, not even me, you know. But all this, we really have to make it all together, and so to target, let's say, this and challenge, I would say, this luxury market, that, you know, be honest with what you say, you know. And I think we have to be even kind of maybe more aggressive, because what you do is a true luxury, and what you do is precious. And yeah, I have this dream, because we are at the first stage, that this Precious Collection will be yours, and that we will make this journey together. Yeah. I give one to you. I will give you also.
All right, thank you very much, Stefan. Is there any question or remark from the audience? Mm-hmm. All right, then I have a final question to my colleague, actually. Because Christian Jorgensen, he's from FSC Denmark. He does a lot on timber promotion, and that's also about the story, telling the story to the market. And I think he's found some effective ways into communicating that story. Would you care to share a bit more about that? Yeah.
Yeah, Christian here. Well, we've done some work on promoting, and that's mainly the lesser-known timber species and getting that, and that's both for the bigger concessions, but definitely also for communities out there. It might be even more important that we know what your species can. So in general, just go to the market and tell the story about the 70,000 species of trees out there, and that we have several thousand that could possibly be used for something in some values, and if we, as Stefan says, this is precious, this is a big part, and we target these species for the right use, then we could possibly do something more. And we see in some markets that people are actually starting to competing about this area about being most sustainable. So we bought climate credits and stuff like that, but there's a push for doing even more and have more of the sustainable goals addressed in some way. And so I think we are going to interesting times where we have retailers and designers who also engage, and actually when we reach out and tell the story of both communities or what you can do with communities in bigger concessions and how much it means for the business case of forest, they are quite often buy into the story, and then the next question comes, and that's where you can buy it, and if that's a problem, because it's not in stores, so your timber is not in Europe, and then we have this, so we need the infrastructure about this storytelling, and that means we need to talk really closely in the change and make the chains really short, so we can get faces on the timber, and that's really what we try to do. And together with this, just new possibilities with ecosystem services on top of this, and all sorts of things that could improve the business case for forests. So yeah, interesting times we are meeting, but also challenging, of course.
You know, when you were just sharing those things, my thought was, why not come up with a label that identifies social and environmental positive impacts based on the actual place where the wood comes from? Because at the moment, I mean, ESG, environment, social governance, rating agencies of listed companies are moving that way, and people want to know exactly what is the real impact on the ground. And free environmental metrics like carbon footprint, biodiversity, and then 3 or 4 social metrics, and then actually having the Gantt chart that shows exactly, and then you could link that to the precious, the pricing, and to the impact investment value that you're creating. Just an idea.
Would that be something you think would work for a situation as a... Excuse me.
Yeah, that's what is supposed to happen, you know. But there is still a lack of understanding and the metrics you are saying. So we're trying also to create some more precise KPI, you know. And that's why this timber, let's say, that coming from the communities, has, you know, impact for me much more than you know, others also certify plantation and operation. So I would say it's not so easy for FSC because it means they will have to split. So I can understand it's not so easy. But yeah, what you say is right. It's going in this direction, but there is still also a high hypocrisy from the market, you know, on this.
Yes, thank you. Emmanuel from the Rainforest Alliance. So I think that the FSC has the payment for environmental services on top now for biodiversity and carbon. And actually our colleague in Mexico, they have done the effort of having that extra biodiversity verification in the FSC framework. But what we see is that even if that is somehow now available and can be used, it's really hard to find a market that would actually buy the wood plus the biodiversity verified on top.
Maybe just quickly on that. If you talk to procurement people, they cannot understand the value that you're creating. I'm a part-time ESG advisor to the Philippine Stock Exchange, and you need to talk to the listed companies and align your value addition to their ESG objectives and to the way how they are judged by ESG rating agencies. That is board level stuff. If you, through your supply, can deliver lower impacts or better positive impacts to exactly the ESG metrics that they have identified, then you should be on a winning pathway. Maybe there's a question of language. No, you know, the two parts don't understand one another.
I think to go there and get the partnerships up and running, I think the work that Scott do on really close connection with these and even formulate the project so they follow the timber products also. So if you are selling chairs, then tell the story about the chairs and then make the partnership about that and put an extra price on the precious activities around this. And this just means that we are today's in the trade challenged by long chains. So from the classic, it's from the forest to the sawmill to the trader through another trader, and then we have the phases of the timber disappears in this chain. So you need to really connect and make this, and we need to formulate these ecosystem service cases in combination with the wood products and what they create, and that's what we are in some way trying to do right now and start up and see what we can do. I see and hear many interesting things on this, but it's really the long chains for classic timber trade who are the and that's where a certification logo that's good for many things, but it does not necessarily get the full story with the people so we need to do more.
This is one of the initiatives, and it's trying to answer this question for procurement people particularly, which is how do you know what is sustainable wood? And certification is a big part of that, but it's not the only part. So, sorry, let me just... There we go. So this is... These are 8 pathways that we've identified for sustainability that can be mixed and matched. They can be added to. So it's maybe hard to read, but certification, social forestry, species and grade that we talked about, global geography. So for a city, when they're looking at, they can evaluate different choices based on these criteria, and they can actually score them independently, but then they can add it up. So if you're looking at one of these woods from, say, the Selva Maya, that's from a certified social forestry concession, you've already got certification, probably a number 3 level social forestry. You can very easily prove that out. Perhaps there's a lesser known species. You're going to get a 3 point for that. Strategic geography, and these are all developed as a concept, so you can go to the reference page and you can basically, as a procurement officer who doesn't necessarily have that knowledge, it's a guide to comparing. But it's comparing the forest impacts, the net carbon storage, the social impacts, and if you're in the building sector, it's like, what is the difference between what I'm doing, building as usual versus working with this low carbon wood product. Anyway, I just thought I'd introduce that because you're all welcome to go to this page. It's on the Partner Forest website.
All right. I think we're on the end of the session. I think we've had a very interesting session. I think we've seen it from many sides. And I would like to thank all of our speakers. I would like to thank the audience for contributing, for engaging with us, and for being here today. And I wish you all a very nice trade fair. All right. Oh, and before everybody leaves, I would like to remind you that on Friday we're having a coffee session together with the Rainforest Alliance at the FSC booth. But can you remind me what time that is? At 10 o'clock on Friday. We will be at the main hall, the Grand Palais. All right, thank you very much.